Whether it's bad planning, bad luck, bad timing, or bad inventions, well-intentioned bad decisions have plagued history for thousands of years. Welcome to Historic Hindsight.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight in Quarantine. Today, we're going to talk to you about Benjamin Franklin. Is that right?
That's right, Johnny. We got
Uh,
we got another bio episode on Benny Franklin. I feel like a lot of people already know most of what they want to know about him, so we won't go into a lot of details about his whole "I invented a stove" and spectacle things. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the other stuff.
Well, he
That
invented lightning too, right?
yeah, he invented lightning, Johnny,
Yeah.
or at least flew a kite and
Huh.
didn't get electrocuted. But
Invented.
we'll get into that story because somebody somewhere may have tried that and did.
Spoiler
But
alert.
if you live in a trash can somewhere and you don't know who the hell Ben Franklin was, he is another polymath, just like Leonardo da Vinci was. So that basically means he does a little bit of everything and maybe lazy,
Yeah, but a little more modern day.
but a little bit more modern day. Yes, yeah. He was one of our founding fathers, also known as the first American for his advocacy of the independence for outside of British rule. So he was one of the very first colonists to actually say, "Hey, look, maybe we should just screw this whole
Yeah.
being under English rule thing."
Maybe we don't need all these assholes that are however many miles away telling us what to do. We got this.
Exactly. Yep. He was also a writer, a printer, political philosopher, politician, Freemason, postmaster, scientist, inventor, humorist, civic advocate, statesman, diplomat, and he really loved his women. I mean,
Well,
he
I mean,
loved his women.
didn't he also invent like 7 STDs?
Uh, or at least he brought them back from
Or
France.
at least he kept them in circulation.
He very he very much did. And he was also like I said, he was a diplomat. So he spent a lot of time in Europe and
Huh.
in Europe.
Yeah, deep in Europe.
Yeah. So he was born on January 17th, 1706, on Milk Street in Boston, Massachusetts. He actually was pretty meager means. His father, Josiah Franklin, was a tallow chandler, which is basically just a candle maker and a soaper. So he used
Okay.
animal fat to make soap and candles.
Make stuff, yeah.
So definitely not a guy coming from highfalutin society. So,
Yeah, wasn't born into his riches and power.
Now, old Benny, he was one of 17 children. So Jesus Christ, Josiah, stop.
You know what?
Stop.
Everybody's bitching and moaning about today how we have to curb the population. It's all these people's fault.
Yes.
Which I know
17
back then it was a game of numbers. Like you had 17 kids because probably 6 to 10 are gonna die before they're 7 years old or whatever. But my goodness,
Yeah, but this was, I mean, 10 of these kids actually were his full siblings through Josiah's second wife, Abia Fogler. Yeah, sure, close enough. So, which is a lot, like 10 kids for one woman to have seems like, God, there can't be much left.
I wonder.
Old.
I wonder if that's why why there's a second wife, because the first one just
First
you
one
have
died
10
after
kids and you're
7.
just like, you know what, this is not the life for me. She probably went and killed herself.
But she had the 7 before, yeah. So I don't know.
She's
Well,
like, I'm done
I'm
popping
sure by
out
that
babies.
10th one, things were just sliding out at that
Oh,
point.
I mean, it's easy at that point, right?
Yeah, you would think it would have to be. Most of his siblings recall saying that he was generally the leader among the boys. So out of all the 17 kids, although he wasn't the oldest, they did look up to him.
I was gonna ask, do you know where he was in the
I
ranking
believe he
of it?
was. I think he was middle.
Kind of in the mid range there somewhere. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. He definitely wasn't the oldest boy because his older brother, he'll come into play a little bit later. Josiah, he wanted his kids to go to school. Specifically, he sent Ben to school with the local clergy, but he could only afford for Ben to actually attend for 2 years at the Boston Latin School, which he did not graduate from because
I mean,
2 years is enough.
It's a good thing he sent him to Latin school. So
The Boston, it's a Catholic school.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure he spent his time well there and used his degree on one of his many different.
He didn't graduate, Johnny. Did not graduate.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he didn't grab So he didn't even have a degree. What a
Uh,
bum.
yeah, I know, right? He'd be self-taught mostly through vigorous reading, just kind of like Da Vinci. He didn't actually get schooling. Would just read
Right.
books in his own mind.
Just had information available, which is kind of what like everybody was supposed to be Ben Franklin when the internet came along. So it's like, look, now you have access to this information, and we
And now we
used
just
it.
think 5G is causing the coronavirus.
Yeah, and yeah, we ruined that. So apparently, access to information is not the only factor of becoming successful.
Yeah, that's true. He would work with his father from age 10 to 12 as an apprentice candlemaker, but he took up a formal apprenticeship with his brother, his older brother James, at his print shop in Boston at the age of 12. So
So he
already at the age, ripe
worked
old age.
hard. Yeah, worked hard for 2 years making candles. Like, you know what? I got to get out of this candle game. I'm gonna go over to the printing press, make a real career at 12.
At 12, yeah, I'm gonna make my life.
Life's so much better now.
He would learn the printing trade at his brother's shop. And when Ben turned 15, James had founded the newspaper, the New England Current, which is one of the first newspapers in the United States, or the colonies at this point, which was, like I said, it was one of the first ones there. James would deny Ben the chance to write a letter in the paper for publication. So Benny is like, hey, this new newspaper, I want to be a part of it. Can I write an article into it? And James said, no.
Okay. I've been through some of the old Civil War newspaper, like Civil War era newspapers and
Yeah.
stuff, and I've seen the crap that's in there. What could he have possibly been putting in there instead of Ben's writings to fill the pages?
Like
How bad could his writings have been? I guess if he's 12, probably
Yeah, the
pretty
Civil War newspapers are definitely not. We think media integrity is bad now. Do a
Oh,
favor and go and read any of that garbage from
it's all available on the
early U.S.
yeah, it's all available on the online through the government. Like they have the
National
microfiche.
Archives.
Yeah, National Archives. They have all the microfiche scanned in, and some of the stuff like the announcements, the stuff for sale, and it's hilarious. Just like,
Oh,
hey,
yeah,
I sell some chairs. I'm gonna sell them now. If you want them, come and find me.
Yeah. But Ben didn't take this lying down. As retaliation, he would start writing an anonymous column in the paper under the pseudonym Miss Silence Dogood, Miss Silence Dogood, who was a middle-aged widow who would give homespun musings ranging from fashion, marriage, women's rights, and religion. So, as a 15-year-old boy, he pretended to be a middle-aged woman and had his own column.
I mean, who hasn't been there? you know?
Mrs. Dogood became the talk of Boston and became so popular that several marriage proposals were offered from eligible bachelors in Boston. So it's not like he had this shitty little column. That's like the equivalent of what was those old columns in newspapers about? Like they asked that woman like advice.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep. Yeah. The ask whoever.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Well,
So
so he's like, he could have added the very first catfisher to his list of accomplishments, but didn't put it on for some reason.
I think we can go ahead and add that, and I'm going to go ahead and speculate because of what happens here in a little bit that that old Benny's brother James might have been one of the people that got catfished because.
But he's like, hey, this girl writing for my paper. All right, what's up, Miss what? What's her name?
Miss Dogood.
Miss Dogood.
Yes, Miss Silence Dogood.
Well, hello. What a perfect name for a woman in that time. Miss Silence Dogood. Shut up and do what you're told. No wonder she got so many marriage proposals. Oh, man, she knows where a woman's place is.
And like I said, he did this completely in secrecy. Nobody knew it was him. Nobody knew this 15-year-old boy was running around pretending to be this middle-aged woman. In 1722, when his brother was arrested for 3 weeks, Benny would actually start publishing material that was unflattering to the governor. Franklin took control of the newspaper and published another Miss Dogood article that stated, without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. So right from the get-go, as a 15-year-old kid, he's like, you can't be arrested, people, for just bad-mouthing the governor in a newspaper. Like, this is ridiculous.
Like, they some sort of savant or something. Like, that's some wild, just capacity.
I didn't have coherent thoughts like that when I was 15.
I have the capacity for thought like that at 15. I don't have the capacity for thought like that now. I just live in
Well,
my own little bubble.
neither do half of our modern
I
politicians.
half as generous.
Uh, by the age of 17, Ben had actually written 14 Mrs. Dogood essays, which are longer, not
Yeah.
just a little column, but actual essays. And he had but he had enough at this point, so he unmasked himself as the author. And
Oh,
James
man.
became probably being jealous and embarrassed because
I
full well
mean,
James fell in love with this woman.
oh yeah.
He became furious with Ben and began chastising and beating Ben for this incident.
I mean, that's fair. No one likes to be duped, especially by a younger brother.
Fair enough. Tired of working underneath his brother, Ben would actually flee for Philadelphia at the age of 17, which actually made himself a fugitive because at this time he did not have permission to leave by his brother, and he was contracted as an apprentice. So
Oh, so even as if you're contracted as an apprentice and you
yeah,
leave,
you can't
all
leave.
of a sudden,
You cannot. Yeah, you cannot leave. You don't have the right to leave your apprenticeship unless they sign off on you. So slavery almost.
a little
I
bit.
mean, the whole workers'
I mean,
rights things haven't quite worked around yet.
well, I mean, they could still use some work.
Uh, just a little bit at least. So once he arrives in Philadelphia, he would work in various print shops, in the area, and he would be disheartened by the immediate prospects of the area. So he was convinced by the governor, Sir William Keith, to go to London and pick up some printing equipment that was needed to build a newspaper. So the governor of the
So
area
he gets
said,
to Philadelphia, starts taking over some newspapers, doing his thing, and he's like, "This is all trash."
yeah, well, he was working for
like,
newspapers.
yeah, and the governor's like, "All right, go to England for me and get what?"
Get equipment to build get a whole new printing press, bring it back, you'll have your own paper.
So their printing press was just garbage, basically.
That, and he didn't like the people who he was working for. So, the governor again. This is the governor. So this is like imagine Mitch Daniels or
Yeah.
anybody
Like, how do
saying,
you?
hey, you know what, Johnny, I want you to go to London for me and pick up this printing press and bring it back.
Man, I couldn't get a meeting with a governor if I tried for years.
And he's 17. He's 17. Yeah. This isn't like
17-year-old kid comes rolling it, but I guess by then he'd been in the workforce for 5-7 years. Like, he's a vet.
Yeah, he sure has.
I mean, he had, by 17, he had been in the workforce longer than I was after college. I worked at Roche for like 6 years.
Yeah.
That's it. Like,
he's got more professional work experience than at this point at 17 than you do in your whole life, Johnny.
And I will in the rest of my life, hopefully.
So Governor Keith, though, there's a problem with him. He's full of shit.
You don't say.
Yeah, he pays for Benny to go to London, but Johnny, there's no equipment to be had in London.
Oh,
and
I thought he just gave him a one-way ticket.
Yeah, and nobody in London was aware of Keith's plans, so they're like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, Ben, but we got nothing for you. Who the fuck are you, and why are you here?"
Could you imagine, as 17 years old, being sent on a trip? You're like, "All right, cool. I'm gonna go pick up this stuff in Europe."
And come right back.
I'm guessing they didn't buy him a first-class plane ticket. He probably had to go coach, so uncomfortable.
Yep.
And
it's like boats? A 2-month boat ride.
Right. Also boats. Yeah, not airplanes.
Yeah. It's a 2-month boat ride.
And you show up and nobody knows why you're there or what you're doing and can't help you.
Yep.
Like, Christ, I went to Belgium at like 21 or 22 or something like that. And I was supposed to meet someone at the airport. I got to the airport and didn't know where to go to find him. And I was just nervous as hell. Like, what the hell am I going to do? What if I don't find these people? I just went to some strange-ass country.
But he does find work as a typesetter in a printer shop in Smithfield, London. So he does find
London. So he's...
Well, it's a one-way boat ticket, Johnny. He's got no way back.
I guess jobs are easier to find back then, too. It's like, well, I guess I'm in this new country. Might as well go get a job.
Yeah, they don't have, like, immigration laws weren't such a thing, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like 17 years old. What do you have? Well, only about 7 years of printer press experience, so nothing major. But, I'm just a young 17-year-old kid. Hopefully I can
you're hired.
Get a job.
He would earn enough money that he would actually wind up working with somebody named Thomas Denham, who was a merchant in the area who actually took him underneath his wing. helped them sell some junk, and actually helped them get back to Philadelphia.
Was he the inventor of jeans, I assume?
Perhaps. I didn't look up too much about Thomas Denham, but maybe.
I'm saying it now. Thomas Denham invented denim jeans.
Sure. Um, I, I don't think you're right, because I think denim came out quite a bit later than 1720. But
he invented the idea for it.
Yeah, sure. In 1727, at the age of 21, Ben would wind up working for the Junto Group, which is a group of like-minded artisans and tradesmen that wanted to improve themselves and their community. So once he gets back to Philadelphia, he creates this group called the Junto Group, and they began making reading their focus. So books being rare and expensive at the time, Ben would create a subscription library where funds would pay for more books. So he creates this group that wants to increase their knowledge and better the community. Good for him.
Yep, great.
But, books are expensive for one person to buy, and obviously he's not from rich means. Right. So what he does is he creates the library system.
Yeah.
And uses subscriptions to make, to buy more books. It's great. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's kind of what Bezos did with his Kindle. Like when Amazon started, it was literally just a digital bookstore, and that was it. You could go and get your books and find all your friends who liked your books or whatever else. But so that's so all right. We're gonna have to get into a conspiracy video at some point about death, because I have this thing where there are like, I don't know, 50 to 100 different like spirits and minds that are just going throughout the ages and keep repeating themselves. And Ben Franklin sounds like he could also be Leonardo da Vinci, that same type of idea.
He's a little less lazy than Leonardo da Vinci, though. He finishes his projects.
I mean, they're going to learn over time eventually, It was 300 years? When was Da Vinci? 1400?
1400, yeah.
Yeah, so 300-ish years.
Yeah.
So just saying, just throwing it against the wall, see if it sticks.
Yeah. This library that he created became the Library Company of Philadelphia, which was formed in 1731. It actually still operates today as a great scholarly research library in Philadelphia. So it's still there. It still works.
So oldest library in the U.S., obviously.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah. It's got to be.
I mean,
at least one of them. Yeah. So when Thomas Denham would actually pass away, Ben returned to his love of printing and opened up his own print shop in 1728. So not working with Denham anymore because he dies, gets out of the merchant business, goes back to printing.
Okay.
In 1729, he forms the Pennsylvania Gazette, which becomes Ben's forum for agitation in a variety of local reforms and initiatives, including spreading the idea of colonial rights. So right off at 1729 already, he's got his newspaper, and he's like, let me tell you something about what I learned in London.
God, I mean, this is just such an example of the power of media. Like, because he had an outlet, and now
he's got a voice.
He's able to do it. Like, people read. There's something powerful about what people read in print. It's like people think that if somebody prints something, then they've checked it out. It's true. It's valid. It's more than what I know, and they must be right.
5G internet, Johnny, causes coronavirus. The people believe that because they read it.
Because they read it somewhere, they saw it, and they don't know enough to draw connections. They're like, well, they said it was because of this. And I had a conversation about this with chemtrails, where people were like, somebody was arguing about the way that a plane flies and how planes shouldn't be able to fly, and because of that, they need these chemtrails and all that. Like, it was just so much garbage. I'm just like, so what about when they're flying and you don't see those chemtrails that you keep calling them? Like, then, like, are they just floating to their death? Like,
yes, Johnny, yes.
God, people are dumb. Anyway, so he got super powerful because he opened up his own newspaper and could print whatever he wants.
Yeah, pretty much. By 1732, he tries to expand it with the first German language newspaper in America called Die Philadelphische Zeitung, which failed a year later because 4 other German newspapers were founded at nearly the exact same time. So he was just...
You want to know what his big problem was? He was about 200 years too early. I know somebody who would have loved to have a German language newspaper in America about 200 years later.
Well, there were. I mean, it failed because there were 4 other ones.
Yeah, they were already.
People wanted.
Well, it's the Pennsylvania Dutch, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yep. Being a reasonable man who didn't hold grudges, though, or maybe he did, Ben Franklin will write of the Philadelphia Germans in 1751 that they were Palatine boors who could never acquire the complexation of the English language and English settlers, and that the blacks and townies are weakening the social structure of the colonies. So, Donald Trump a little bit?
I like that, especially because English is primarily a Germanic language.
But they couldn't understand the complexity of it, and he compared them to blacks and townies, and they said that they're weakening our social structure.
I mean, to be fair, have you looked at German words? Like, they don't make complex words for things. They just string a bunch of simple words together and call it that complex thing. Like, they just keep stringing different words together. Like, it's all of these things combined. Should we come up with a new word for it? No, just make it 72 letters.
Yeah, that is very.
Like, can you imagine sitting through a German spelling bee? What kind of nightmare would that be?
Oh, God, I don't even want to. Later, though, he would recant these statements, which mainly because he was in politics at the time. But it was a little bit too late because it pretty much led to his political defeat in 1764 because, you know, the Germans were like,
Pissed off the Germans. Don't want that.
And what people don't remember is, like, in the United States, you had English settlers and then German.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, yes, there were more English, but not by a ton.
Well, and then there were also all those other folks that happened to be here before we got there, but we took care of that little issue.
Yeah,
they were no longer available to protest.
He would then go on to use his printing press to attempt to instruct the colonies on moral virtue, citing service to God, despite many of his own moral missteps, including multiple infidelity affairs that we can't even count.
Well,
because
I mean,
Jesus Christ, this guy loved his women.
Hey, are you gonna learn from your mistakes? Or are you going to, just keep making the same mistake?
It's do as I say, not as I do.
Or are you going to continue to make the same mistakes and say that you learned from them so that you're better?
Yeah,
I think that's probably the route he took.
Yeah, he took I'm going to continue to do it. One of these multiple affairs actually would wind up leading to his bastard child, William Franklin, who in 1730, Ben did acknowledge as his son, like, yep, he's mine. And then Will would go on
I did that.
Yeah, I did that. And then he would go on to be a huge British supporter. So, that was just because, screw you, Dad.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole lot of hit it and quit it right there. And that's on the son, really. Like, how are you going to support the British? Like, where were you born, kid? Come on. Wait, he was born in the U.S., right? Or with the colonies?
Yeah, he was born in the colonies. Yes, yeah. Ben believed that the Republic could only stand if it was virtuous, and he often spoke of his duty to God and living a moral life, despite, again, never attending church and his own moral what?
Who does that remind me of?
Again, God is important. Okay, he believed that he wanted to expand his newspaper across the colonies in an attempt to create this national newspaper system, which he actually was partly successful with.
Okay.
So, thank you, Ben, for the modern media that's owned by like two people.
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah, worked out really well.
Yeah. Freedom of the press.
Yeah, right. By 1733, he would expand his press to include the publication of his Poor Richard's Almanac, which that's the famous thing that most people remember with all those stupid sayings and proverbs, which a penny saved is a penny earned is not one of his. It actually is a penny saved is 2 pence dear, and not at all a penny saved is a penny earned.
And all of those little idioms are just, we bastardize them so much that they don't make any sense anymore, and they're definitely not used for the purpose they were originally created.
No.
Like,
although
the whole what is it? It's the curious cat one. There's one about a curious cat.
Yeah, curious cat. The caution killed the curious cat or something like that.
But something else.
Curiosity killed the cat. That's it.
Curiosity killed the cat, but something else set it free or something. I don't know, some bullshit like that.
And nobody remembers the second part of it, which
which
don't
is
remember
like
the second part of it.
Makes the whole idiom make sense. And
although he did have an idiom that I actually do like, and it is relevant today, and it's 100% accurate. He says fish and visitors stink after 3 days.
I mean, that's
Yep.
argue
Sure do.
with it. Yeah, argue with that.
Nope, sure do. Um,
To prove
his,
me wrong.
his Poor Richard's Almanac will become so popular that 10,000 copies will be sold per year. And by 1748, at the age of 42, he's made enough money that that he could retire, and he becomes a gentleman of leisure, is
That's
what he
the
called
dream.
himself.
Man, he was a gentleman of leisure before.
Yeah, pretty much. But he becomes, yeah,
Like legit leisure though. Like, all right, I'm
he's
bringing the women in from Europe now, not going to Europe.
yeah, pretty much. After his retirement, it's when he gets himself involved in politics, actually, like formally involved in politics.
Because what else are you gonna do with your time?
Yeah, he dives himself into science, and is also where he starts his inventions. And even after all this, even after becoming a politician, though, after becoming a scientist and inventor, he still signed every document with B. Franklin printer. So
Hey, he remembered his roots.
he remembered his roots.
It's
He
like
sure did.
all those hip hop artists. You know, they say don't forget where you came from. You
Yeah.
know, once you get to the top, you got to remember the struggle. And so he reminds himself of the struggle. He's like, man, I've been a printer since I was 10 years old or 12 years old, whatever it was. 12 years old, I guess, when he
12
started.
to 42. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, what? 30 years? Yeah,
That's
I call
pretty good.
myself a printer too.
I'm not going to do anything for 30 years.
Oh, God, I hope not. 30 years is such a long time.
Yep. He began toying with electricity in 1746, and he became the first to label electricity in terms of positive and negative charges. So scientists, right off the bat, he's the first to understand the poles of electricity, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be an autistic savant or something like that. Like they're
Something. I mean,
just to have that type of
mindset
come up and be like, oh yeah, there's like these types of charges going. Like it's insane.
And Johnny, to go one further, in 1748, he creates a multiple plate capacitor, which is the first electric battery. So what the hell? Like, I mean, before light bulbs exist, before the idea of anything needing electricity, he's creating a battery.
He's like, I know how to store it, guys. He probably thought he's like, I'm going to store this, and then I'm going to be able to shoot lightning bolts out my hands. Guys, watch.
He was probably working for that. Yeah.
Like,
in 1753, he would be given the Royal Society's Copley Medal for his work with electricity, and he became the founding father of American Enlightenment, earning honorary degrees from Harvard, Yale, and William and Mary.
I love all these. I love all these colleges being like, we want our name attached to him. Yeah, we'll give
you're
him a
super
degree.
smart. Here's a doctorate.
Yeah. The Harvard's like, I wanna Ben Franklin. It's like, no, I'm giving him a degree. Like, God.
And those are like, even today, those are like
please.
3 of the colleges to go to in the United States. And,
I mean, was it not the only 3, or?
Oh no, there was a few more. I mean, not a ton. I'm sure you had like New York University sitting around.
Yeah. Some podunk school that everyone made fun of.
I mean, Hanover doesn't exist yet.
Oh, no, that's true.
Another 100 years before we come around.
Nah, 50, right? 60? What do you?
No, it was 1850, wasn't it?
I thought it was like 1812 or something like that.
Oh, maybe. I don't remember. I went there. I didn't pay.
Pay attention to your alma mater, Tommy.
Yeah, it might have been the early 1800s.
1812 was either the year Hanover was founded or Noblesville, Indiana. But they were about the same time, so they were close.
All right, well, something important happened in Indiana in 1812.
Well, something happened. Let's not call it important.
He proved that lightning is electricity, with his kite experiment, which was first proved on May 10th, 1752 by somebody named Thomas Dalibard of France. So He created this experiment, wrote about it, published it, said, look, lightning is electricity. You can prove it by this kite flying up in the air with the key hanging down. Lightning strikes the kite, you'll see the electricity coming off the key. But he didn't want to test it himself right off the bat. He goes, listen, I'm going to publish it. I'll let some other fool try it first.
That's the safest way to do science.
Yeah.
This is what I think might happen. Anyone want to give it a go?
And Thomas Dalibard did, and it worked. It did exactly what he said. Ben Franklin himself wouldn't actually test his own theory until June 15th. And he did so on a rubber mat because he was smart enough to know, not conductive. I don't know, but it was on a rubber mat.
I mean, okay, the way I learn everything is through trial, and everything that I learn is trial and error.
And how is he?
I can't learn anything having people talk at me. I can't learn anything reading what I have to actually do it, try it, and make it happen. So like, I wouldn't learn if I were to discover electricity. I wouldn't learn that rubber mats help until I accidentally stepped on one while I was getting charged. I'm like, oh, look at that! It didn't electrocute me.
Well, maybe he built like a pole out of rubber, and then like lightning never struck that pole, so he's like,
maybe. I don't know. That's crazy though. Yeah, that's wild. People are so smart, man.
This experiment would actually lead Ben to invent the lightning rod, so he's responsible for lightning rods.
He's like, I don't want to hold on to this shit anymore, because what if, let's just make a big pole, and then we'll see if it hits that instead.
And then it'll guide the electricity safely to the ground as opposed to throughout the whole house, zapping the shit out of anybody.
That's a heady play.
Yeah, it's good. In 1730s and 1740s, Ben would be the leading figure of science, and of like population studies. So he
sociology kind of.
No, like demographics, like
okay,
census kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like
So
all those Germans who didn't vote for me are over there.
Yeah, we got to figure out where they live, and then
why don't we set up our voting process in such a way that this little area gets one electoral college vote, and this area gets 9 of them?
Yeah, pretty much. He also invents something called taction kiting, which uses kites to pull humans across waterways. So fun.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it's kite surfing now, right?
Yeah, it's kite surfing.
It's the same thing. Kite surfing is wild. Like there's nothing. Like I watched some videos of it, and I'm like, man, that'd be really really cool to try. But I'm really really scared that kite would just like lift up and it's just gone. It just keeps going. And then what do you do? You catch a wind current, and all of a sudden, 3 days later, you're in England, plopping down. I don't have any printing press experience. How am I going to get a job?
I don't know, Johnny. He also goes on to propose cooling by evaporation in 1758. So he essentially creates the first like air conditioning, refrigerating system, which is again like this guy's just sitting around thinking of shit.
Man, this is a guy who never discovered drugs or alcohol.
And it all worked well.
Did he?
He drank.
Okay.
I don't know about the drugs part, but the alcohol, he enjoyed himself some parties.
Man, he's got a whole lot of go get 'em in him.
He does. And his shit works. Like, I can come up with a crazy idea, but what's the
odds? Oh, yeah, no, I can come up with a billion of them, but none of them are going to work or be scientifically sound.
But his shit works. I mean, it's crazy.
Like, give me a death ray that'll blow up a whole country. Easy. Boom. Idea done. Give me a death ray that'll only kill the whole country, but only people I want. It'll be individual, and it'll scatter it around. You can't do that. It's insane.
Johnny, another random fact I found about him is that he loved swimming. He invented his own set of swim fins, and he would actually earn an honorary place in the International Swimming Hall of Fame due to his swimming fin invention.
Like the snorkel feet.
Yeah. You attach them onto your feet, swim fins.
I'll tell you what, I'm not a water person. Don't swim well. I sink like a rock. Whatever. Don't love the water. But you give me a set of fins and a snorkel mask, it's magical under the water.
You're now a badass swimmer.
You can fly. You go underneath. Like, you can do whatever you want. It's amazing.
Some of the other inventions that he had, and I'll just kind of wrap it up with his inventions real quick. He also invented a flexible catheter, 24 hours.
Oh, what? Back up.
Yeah, flexible catheter.
I'm sorry. Before that, there were rigid
I guess they weren't
catheters?
flexible. I guess they were just a steel rod that went in your woo-hoo.
Oh, kill me.
Yeah, that kid out uncomfortable, right?
Kill me. Are you kidding me? No, thank you.
So the biggest thing he invented, the most important thing, is the flexible catheter.
No shit.
He did do the 24-hour three-wheel clock, which is basically just a mechanical clock.
Okay.
Nothing huge there. Bifocals.
Yeah, no
Franklin
big deal. Just
stove.
invented a clock.
Yeah, who cares about that shit?
Yeah, you invented
Uh,
clock, Tom. You told me it's no big deal.
But most importantly, he invented a long arm extension, which helped him get books off the high shelf. So that that little
the T-Rex
claw thing,
grabber.
that was Benny Franklin.
Unstoppable. Oh,
That
that's
was Benny
fantastic.
Franklin. Yep.
Good old Ben.
And last but not least, in 1761, he created a musical instrument known as the glass harmonica, which replicated the sounds of the wet finger over the glass rim. Yeah, exactly. The woo woo. Yeah,
He's like, oh, this is cool.
That. And it was used by none other than Mozart and Beethoven. They actually liked it and used it.
See, this is what gets me. This is why I have such a hard time with history. Mozart and Beethoven, to me, live nowhere near in the same reality as Benjamin Franklin.
Nope, same time.
Mozart and Beethoven, to me, are like 700 AD. Like, I don't know what it is. My brain just doesn't. And I know, when they were alive, I studied music and I did stuff and I looked at it, but my brain can't wrap around the fact that while Ben Franklin was out chilling doing his stuff,
while the revolution was going on,
what would become America is when Mozart and Beethoven and all that or before even are doing all of their stuff. Like, I see all these classical composers as such a more 13th, 14th century is where I put them in my brain, even though that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's what gets me with history.
It's weird, yeah. Especially when we learn American history and you think it's so recent, and then you learn about European history and you think it has to come before American history. So when you hear about Beethoven, it's natural, I think.
I think a lot of it is the way that we're taught. It's world history and then it's U.S. history, and we learn all the world history, and then we think, okay, it's the world history and then U.S. history. Yeah. But it's like, oh wait, the rest of the world was doing stuff when America was?
Weird.
They're probably still doing stuff now, aren't they?
We're not the center of the world?
Do you think other people in other countries, do you think they're like doing things that are important? Or
But Johnny, if you look at a map, the US is in the center. We cut Russia in half, Johnny. Because clearly the US is in the center.
I love that so much. We're just like, nope. Screw you. You got to go, from that edge all the way to that one.
Yep.
From one city to the next.
So getting into a little bit of his public life and his politic career, in 1736, Ben would create the Union Fire Company and be one of the first volunteer fire stations in the colonies. So
at this point, he's 36 years old, or 30 years old. He was born in 1706.
Yeah.
So at 30 years old,
creating a fire station.
He makes a fire station.
The same year, he began printing currency for New Jersey, implementing a new anti-counterfeiting techniques, which is one of my favorite parts of early American money, is when we were printing money, there wasn't like large printing presses that were doing this. It was done by hand. And so you would have counterfeiters that would go in, get drunk at a bar, and while they're drinking at the bar, would create their own counterfeit note and hand it to the bartender, still wet with ink. And they were like,
he's like, all right.
Sounds right. So
being a criminal before 1900
had to be so easy.
So easy. Like, all you have to do is get rid of your empathy and morals.
It's like
if you can get rid of those two things, boom, do whatever you want. No one's
play Red Dead Redemption 2, and the only thing stopping you from shooting that random guy on the road is whether or not you want those moral points or not.
Yeah, and it's, well, for me at least, it's how realistic he looks as an actual human being. And I'm like, man, this guy is just trying to travel along back home to his family, and then he's going to go and support. And what am I'm going to be the asshole that just kills him in the road? They're going to be missing him. They're not going to know that he's gone and dead because...
That's why I can't be the bad guy. I can't be bad guys in video games because I
tried so hard. Yeah, I try so hard in my video games to be the bad guy. I want that dark, like Knights of the Old Republic. Always try to be dark, and the best I could do was like 3 notches below the average, the light, whatever. 3 notches, because I'm like, you really make you be an asshole if you want to be dark side. Like you gotta really, really hate or not care about anybody but you.
Johnny, he did get back to Benny here. He did create the academy and charity school, and he acted as their president and helped open the school on August 13th, 1751. And he helped educate the youth of Philadelphia, especially the poor and downtrodden that didn't have access to education.
That's a man who didn't forget where he came from.
Yeah.
Remembering those roots. That's why he kept putting printer at the bottom of it. Keep him humble. It's a heady play.
In 1743, he would found the American Philosophical Society. So just a bunch of dudes sitting around thinking. That's just a bunch of dudes not wanting to be at home with their wives. So
you can't win them all.
No.
Yeah.
During the King George's War of 1744 to 1748, he helped raise a militia to defend Philadelphia because nobody else was. So
I love how easy it was to raise a militia back then.
Yeah, basically.
Hey guys, who wants to fight for me?
Yeah, First Indian Wars are going on, and the Indians and French are threatening Philadelphia, and he's like, one of us should probably do something about this.
Hey guys, anybody? Nope. Looking around? No. You? No. All right. Well, looks like that falls on me.
I'm gonna do it
again.
And again, this is all way before the American Revolution. Like he's doing
he's
retired.
It's 32 years, right?
Yeah. By the time the revolution hits, he's an old man who's like done.
Yeah, 1776 was our
was the Declaration of Independence.
The end of it, and so he's what?
No, that wasn't the end of it, Johnny. That was the beginning of it.
Well, the Declaration though.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And so
there's a whole war thing that happened after that.
What? It was minor. Didn't matter. He's 71 at that point, right?
Right. In 1754, he headed the Pennsylvania delegation to the Albany Congress, which gathered to improve relations with the Indians and French. So after the French and Indian War, he's a part of a congregation to kind of help that peace treaty along and repair those relations with those crazy Indians that we fucked over.
Trick him into screwing him over more.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
From 1755 to the mid 1770s, he would spend a significant amount of his time in London, where he was assigned to smooth the British colonial relationship. So we're like, hey, look, I got an idea. We don't want to go to war with England. This guy who's been saying we need to separate ourselves from England, why don't we send him over to England to smooth things over?
See, I have a different opinion of how that happened based on what I've just learned about Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, what's that?
So I think they needed somebody to go over there, and I think he volunteered. And I think he's like, hey, you know what? I've hit every single broad in this town that'll let me hit it. I'm going to head over to England and get some fresh tail.
And, Johnny, he did just that. I'm
telling you. He volunteers like, guys, I'll go over and get some of that sweet English,
During this time, he did do a lot of his further scientific explorations in London, and he would meet multiple notable upper
true man of science.
Yeah, multiple upper class individuals, including their wives, which he loved to throw lavish parties for. And there's a 0% chance any of them wound up in his bedroom during one of those said lavish parties.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess it's higher than 0.
In 1757, he would be sent to London to protest the Penn family's influence and proprieties of the colony. So think about old school wealthy family relationships and how they exist nowadays and how they screw over politics.
Right.
Go figure that's what was going on all the time.
You don't say. Rich people were buying off politicians and having them do things that they wanted them to do.
Yep. So
even
at this time,
then?
Yeah. So at this time in the American colonies, proprietors were basically they were the policymakers of the colony in that area. So essentially, they were the mandated rulers of that colony, and they owned all that land in that colony. So the governors, proprietors, they were like the heads.
Right.
Basically mini kings.
Yeah, it's like if your local governor was a monarchy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, Johnny, these guys, just to make matters even better, why maybe the Americans hated them a little bit, exempt from taxes.
You don't say.
So basically, the whole revolution starts over everybody hating this one Penn family. Uh,
Why is anybody exempt from taxes? Pay your damn taxes.
so he would remain in London for 5 years fighting the Penn influence and the proprietor system in general, and he attempted to overturn legislation, including not paying taxes. So basically, like, if they are going to be the leader, they should at least pay some fucking taxes. It didn't work, Johnny, though, and he had very limited success due to his fact that he had no real prominent members of legislators in support of him. Maybe
I'm
because
gonna
he was having parties where he stuffed their wives.
also maybe because the people who didn't want to be taxed were going ahead and paying those, lawmakers, governors, whatever, politicians, and saying, "Hey, don't vote for that, and I'll give you whatever the equivalent of 10 grand is back then. I don't know, $100,
Yeah, sure.
whatever."
So in 1764, he would wind up returning back to Philadelphia, and he would create the Anti-Proprietary Party, and he fought against the Penn family on continental soil this time, and he ran against them in the royal government election of 1764, which that's the one that he lost because of the whole "I don't like the Germans" thing.
I mean, maybe, but have you also considered that maybe it's just like lobbyists have existed in America since before America was a thing, and a bunch of lobbyists were kind of stacking the deck against them?
Shh, Johnny, don't tell everybody how our American system works.
No, you're right. Yeah, no, lobbyists are an important part of the American political system because they
Do things. They do things, Johnny. They do
they
things.
right, but I'm trying to think of the helpful things they do and the things that benefit people instead of just them. They do.
Well,
They.
okay, Johnny. In 1764, Benny would use his lobbyists to become the Speaker of Pennsylvania House.
Oh well, good for
So,
Benny. Okay.
yeah, so good for him. I don't know what else the lobbyists do, but
Okay. Well, since 1764, though, they've done exactly zero good deeds.
yeah, but he would
I'm going
lose
on record.
he would lose that seat in October because he was a whore and he had
Well,
some affairs.
you
And that
got your
lost the public-
priorities. Ben
He was
Franklin
sitting
made
there-
up his mind. He's like, you know what my priorities are?
He was
Liberty
preaching about
and women.
He
And I'm
was
about to
preaching about-
liberate some women.
he was preaching about morality, and then everybody's like, "But you're stopping my wife."
Hey, man, you know what? Just because I am not living a moral life does not mean that you can't.
You shouldn't. Yeah, right.
You need to go
After
ahead
this
and live
loss,
a moral life and continue to stay with your wife because I really just wanted to hit it and quit it. And so we're done with that. Stay with her. That way she won't be coming to me being like, "Oh, but Ben, you said you love me." And everything is taken care of.
pretty much, yeah. After this loss, he would be sent back to London to continue negotiations as a representative for the colonies there, which
Okay.
worked out well.
I love what we sent to represent the colonies, though.
It was great, but that
Like, hey, go sleep with their wives.
pretty much. He fought against the Stamp Act of 1765 and failed to prevent its passing. And he then pissed off a bunch of people off in Philadelphia when he presented one of his friends to the position of stamp distributor of Pennsylvania. So he goes over, tries to stop the Stamp Act, doesn't work, and then he makes one of his friends the tax collector.
You want to know what my favorite thing in the world is? That for the past 300 years, the United States has not changed one fucking bit.
No, it really hasn't.
Like, hey, let's elect some politician who has no idea what anything's like, and then he's just gonna make whoever he wants, whatever he wants to make him.
But he earns his
Deal
he
with
earns
it.
his favor back here, Johnny, because he actually then goes to Congress or whatever you call
Whatever it was before.
English
Yeah.
equivalent or whatever it is, or Parliament. He goes there and he testifies of why the colonials aren't paying the tax, and he's one of the big reasons why the tax is repealed. So,
Oh, hey, good job. Good on
you
you.
know, good for him.
Quit
While in
hiring your
London,
friends, hire qualified people.
right?
God.
While in London, he stayed in a house called on Braven Street, where he developed a close, and I mean close, friendship with the landlady, Margaret Stevenson, and her circle of friends, in particular her daughter Mary, whom he was kind of up in all of them, because why
Okay.
not?
All
But
right.
the reason why I bring it up is it's the only house that Franklin ever lived in that still stands today and is a museum to Franklin right now in London. So
Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and give everybody who's like, "Oh man, I'd love to go see that house. It's gonna be awesome." It's gonna be a letdown.
did you go to it? Was it a letdown?
No, but every single house of like so and so used to live in here and it was awesome is a shithole. Because turns out
Probably.
houses weren't great back in the day. They were literally just what you needed to live.
Yeah,
Ceilings
probably.
are like 6.5 feet tall. There's like 2 rooms. It's garbage.
At this point, he became involved in radical politics, as of what he was doing right now wasn't radical. And he joined a group called the Honest Whigs.
The Whig
And
Party? Is this part of the Whig Party?
not
I've
not,
heard,
not
I've
that
heard
Whig
that.
Party, no,
No, different.
different
No,
Whig Party.
okay.
Yeah. He secured a post for his illegitimate son William as colonial governor of New Jersey. So he gives his son a cush job.
So even though this asshole is pro England, he's like, "Hey, I'll give you a job because
Yeah,
you're."
he doesn't be the governor of New Jersey. Later, obviously, the differences in politics would split these guys up, and William would spend much of the revolution under house arrest because he supported England, and New Jersey was like, yeah, we don't.
I can't decide right now if I'm for or against Ben Franklin hiring his son for that, or because on one hand, it's it's what's that word? It begins with an N.
I have no idea, Johnny.
It's where you hire your own family. Anyway, on one hand is that, the other he didn't agree with them. And so it's
Yeah,
like
it's
he has
like
opposite politics. So it's like, are you really doing like that?
he's my son, but he's kind of an asshole, so I don't like
Right.
him.
I still feel like maybe hire a person who's qualified instead.
Well, he didn't.
I'll think of that word in a minute.
he
I'll let
did.
you know when I do.
By 1773, leading up to the Revolution now, Franklin wrote his two most celebrated pro-American essays called Rules by Which a Great Empire May Be Reduced to a Small One and An Edict by the King of Prussia. He pretends to be the King of Prussia and writes this edict about how English crown is evil.
Again, back in the day, you could do whatever you want and no one's ever gonna know. And he's just like, I'm just gonna be a bunch of pseudonyms. I'm gonna write whatever I want, just put another name on it, and we're good to go.
He did push for peaceful cooperation with England at first, as opposed to like full out insurrection. But after the Boston Tea Party, he was quoted stating that an act of violent injustice on our part, which he kind of was right. I mean, it was a degree of terrorism almost.
Yeah.
Just like the Boston Massacre was totally our fault. And that's why Adams successfully defended the British soldiers there, against murder charges, because when you're a crowd of motley assholes throwing rocks at the soldiers, saying, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, and then one of them does, it's kind of your fault.
I mean, yeah, it's like that 911 call. It's like, what are you gonna do? Stab me? And then there was like a stabbing victim.
Yeah.
Like his 911 calls, what are you gonna do? Stab? And then he got like, yes.
Yeah, he sure did. He returns to the colonies on May 5th, 1775, after the revolution had already begun. He returns to the Pennsylvania Assembly, and he's appointed as their delegate to the Second Continental Congress. So by the Second Continental Congress, he's now a part of it. And on June 1776, he was appointed to the Committee of Five that drafted the Declaration of Independence. So
there it is.
I believe it was Adams, Franklin, Jefferson. Well, those are the three that I know. I know the three were on it. I'm sorry, Johnny.
Come on, Tommy.
I'm sorry.
This is the start of what's made you what you are today.
I know, but I got three.
And you can only name three. Which is
Adams,
more than I could.
More than you could name. Come on, Johnny. God, I know there was 2 more, but whatever. It doesn't. It's not.
I think it was Washington and Lincoln.
No, nope.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% positive.
I
I'm 100%
remember those
positive.
names from my history classes.
Um,
P.S. By the way, nepotism is the word I was looking
yeah,
for.
I was thinking nepotism. Yeah, although I didn't want to be the idiot to say nepotism and be wrong.
I couldn't come up with it.
Although keep in mind he was appointed to this position, but he actually did not attend most of the meetings because he had a case of the gout. So
yeah, he was 70 fucking years old. Like
he had the
he's like,
gout.
what?
And he's like, I don't need to be here.
I'm on that committee? I don't want to go to that. How far away? No, that'll take
3 blocks from my house. Screw that. It's hot.
It'll take hours to get a cab. Can you imagine? Like,
oh.
Ugh.
After signing the Declaration of Independence, he was quoted saying, "Yes, we must indeed all hang together, or we most assuredly will all hang separately." So he's like, "Look, we're fucked if we lose
like,
this
guys,
shit, we're all dead."
Everybody around here, yeah, we fucking did the thing. We gotta finish the thing now, because otherwise, it's all over.
We're gonna be finished.
Yeah.
In December 1776, Franklin was dispatched to France as a commissioner for the United States.
He's like, hey, I'm guessing on that trip to Europe, he was a little less confident than the previous ones.
Yeah, maybe. He was supposed to elicit French aid and support in the revolution, which, I mean, he somewhat did successfully, eventually.
I'll bet what he did more successfully was French women, though.
Well, yeah, because he was sent there in 1776, right, Johnny? He secured military aid and an alliance in 1778, so 2 years he got it.
Not bad.
It's okay. But by aid, they half-heartedly sent some equipment. They actually didn't send troops until 1783, right before the end of the revolution, which, way to go. You took almost 10 years to get something accomplished.
All right, to be fair, it's a very American style.
Come in at the end and then
be like, hey, look at us.
Which is totally what the French did. They came in at the end and, well, to be fair, and
you're welcome.
In all fairness, if it wasn't for the French fleet, the British would have been able to get in their boats, sail back to England, and we wouldn't have been able to, force a surrender of the entire army.
And in all fairness, Britain would not have been able to win World War II without the U.S. coming in and offering support.
Fair point.
At the very end.
World War I, we came in at the very end. World War II, we were there for like over half the time.
Ish.
Ish. Yeah, I mean, ish. Hey, we
were also only kind of involved.
Johnny,
like we were like sending people, but like nothing was happening in America. So except for the whole Pearl Harbor thing, which is like Japan.
The war started for us in 41. World War II actually started in 39. So it ends in 45. So we're there half the time.
Yeah, we were over there. Yeah, okay.
All war was declared for half the time.
There you go. That's a good way. That's a much safer way of putting it.
In 1783, he would be part of the Treaty of Paris.
Jesus, how long? All right. How long did this man live?
For fucking ever, Johnny. We're not done yet. We still got. I'm almost at his end of life and death stuff. Bear with me. We're getting there, Johnny. During the Treaty of Paris, that he wrote that he was like the high society, so like everybody was doing his fashion. So while he was over there being the commissioner for us, he wore beaverskin hats, the whole like rocket stuff.
Yeah.
And so everybody in France started wearing that. And during the Treaty of Paris, he wore a white hat, and then immediately everybody in Paris started.
And then it was like, oh, that's what is in style now. I will go to that.
And while he was in France, he did a lot of speeches about freedom of religion and freedom of speech, which largely led to that whole French Revolution off with a head thing.
Yeah, he had a little bit to do with that.
Yeah, I had a little bit to do with that. Yep.
Kind of stoked the coals there and got the flames going a little bit.
He returned to America in 1785, where he occupied the position only second to George Washington, known as, and I wish we would bring this back, Johnny, Champion of American Independence. We should still have that position in government.
Oh, yeah, we should.
Yep.
But good luck finding somebody to fill it that you can agree
This
on.
this was my favorite part about Franklin that I found out so far in this whole research. When he returned from France in 1785, he was short 100,000 pounds of congressional funds, which, when he was questioned about, he stated, "Muzzle not the ox that treadeth out his master's grain." The missing funds were never mentioned again. What? He stole 100,000 pounds.
100,000
100,000 pounds in
in
1785.
1785.
And when asked about it, he goes, "Yeah, of course. I mean, you're not going to get mad at the ox who muzzles your grain, are you?" "Yes, yes, I would. Why wouldn't I?"
If he's broken and stole 100,000 pounds of it, yes. What's that equivalent? Did you look? Did you?
I didn't for this one, no, Johnny. I'm sorry. Well, I'll keep talking. You look it
You
up.
keep talking. I'm gonna look up. It was how much
100,000 pounds.
in 1780?
1785. Yeah. On October 18, 1785, he was elected president of the Supreme Executive Council of Pennsylvania, where he held that position for 3 years. Basically, he's the governor. In 1787, he would be appointed delegate of Philadelphia Convention, but it would mostly be an honorary position because he never really showed up, and he only engaged in 2 debates during that time. And he is the only founding father who signed all 4 major documents of the nation's founding, including the Declaration of Independence, the Treaty Alliance with France, the Treaty of Paris, and the United States Constitution.
Well, holy shit.
So all the major documents that got us to where we are, his signature's on all of them, and the only one whose signature's on all 4.
So Tommy, $185,000, right?
100,000 pounds.
100,000.
Yeah, 100,000.
100,000 pounds in 1785. In 2020 money is $26.6 million that nobody asked him about.
No, nobody was mad about it. No.
Tom, if I had $26 million to spend and I spent 25 of it on a house, I would have a hard time spending the rest of that $1 million.
Yep. But, well, I'm sure it went on to hookers and blow. Like, let's be honest.
I mean, it couldn't have been that much back then. For crying out loud.
Well, Johnny, to start wrapping things down here.
Hold on. I might be off by a figure. I'm off by 1 figure.
2 million then?
So it's only 2.5 million. Oh, that's all right. That's nothing.
Whatever. Still 2.5.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't understand why anybody was upset about it at all. Why did they even ask about it?
Yeah, right.
It was only $2.6 million.
Between 1771 and 1788, he would wind up finishing his autobiography. He wrote it himself, so I'm sure it's super accurate.
I mean, everything I've ever written about myself has been
super accurate,
purely fact.
Yeah.
No hyperbole, no polishing the edges.
No ignoring the bad things and only talking about the good.
What bad things, Tommy? Read my autobiography. There's no bad things. Saint.
Towards the end of his life, Benny had a change of heart about slavery. So at first he was a slave owner, and then towards the end of his life, he's like, I double thinking that.
Don't need them anymore, so maybe they're people, I don't know.
Yeah, right. He was personally responsible for owning 7 slaves during his life, which were mostly used as house servants. I'm sure none of them were used as helpers.
I mean, house service is such a broad term.
Right. He would also personally profit from the slave trade during his life, and he was even critical of slaves that would run off and join the British soldiers during the Revolutionary War. So he's like, look, you can't fight for the other side.
So he was like every other.
He was like every American. At this time, I'm not critical of him for having slaves or being a part of it.
Again,
it's just the hypocrisy of it is all I'm pointing.
Right, yeah, but it's just the whole thing of back then, like literally
everybody did, yeah,
in every country, everywhere. Like the slaves that we brought from Africa were slaves in Africa. That we brought here, and we just kind of kept it going a little bit longer than the rest of the world. And what's the big deal? You know, we had to make our money. We were a young country.
Right?
What are you gonna do? Pay our labor? That's insane. How are you gonna build monopolies if you do that?
By the 1760s, though, he would have a change of heart. He would become anti-slave, and by 1770, he began speaking out against the institution of slavery altogether. Although he did have a history of arguing both sides during this time too, because I think he just likes to argue both sides.
Also,
he
maybe a little bit of Alzheimer's.
It could
Like
be.
70 years old at this point, right? Ish.
Yeah, and he did
60,
refuse to debate the issue. Yeah, he did refuse to debate the issue of slavery during the Constitutional Convention to set up our whole government. He's like, yeah, we're just not gonna. I'm not gonna talk about it.
I mean, that's probably what everybody was
Politician
doing,
did.
though. They're like,
Yeah.
it's a hot issue. Don't touch that.
Yeah,
We'll let future us deal with that.
the future us. Yeah, that's their problem. Screw them.
Man, I'll tell you what,
1860.
Past John is an asshole. He leaves so much stuff for future John to do.
Past Tommy is an asshole too. In 1790, he would write a petition to Congress urging them to grant the liberty to those unhappy men who alone in this land of freedom are degraded into perpetual bondage. You know, minus the Indians. Again, we still don't even acknowledge them. We're like, no, it's just slaves.
Tommy, the men.
I'm sorry.
Not the animals.
The men, yeah.
Yeah.
This petition was obviously ignored. Franklin would die on April 17th, 1790, of a pleuritic attack at the age of 84. So he was 84 when he finally died, which in that time frame is archaic.
Yeah, that's insane. That's like the average lifespan now.
He did have, even at his death, though, he did have some slaves. Reports are a little contradictory regarding this. Some state that he freed his slaves in 1770. However, in his own will, a condition of his children getting his inheritance was that they had to free the remaining slaves owned by the Franklin family. So he didn't free his slaves in 1770. He made his kids do it to get their money.
Okay, but do you want to know why?
Why is that, Johnny?
I know this for fact. The slaves that he kept on the payroll, or well, not the payroll, on the slave roll,
Yeah.
were the ones he was stupid.
Well, yeah, I guarantee it.
Yeah, and he's like,
By
all
that
right,
time,
we're
at
done
84.
with those. Let them go. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, because at 84, he's not, I mean, why pay for it when I already own it?
I mean, exactly. That's how I feel as a married man.
As a final odd send-off, in his will, Franklin would donate 2,000 pounds sterling to Boston and Philadelphia, both of them, with the caveat that for the first 100 years, the money could only be placed into a trust and used to provide loans to local tradesmen, with the rest remaining off limits for another 100 years. So basically, half could be used for small interest loans for small businesses. The other half you have to keep for 100 years and not touch. And then after 100 years, it's all yours.
What happened to it?
Both cities actually
what did that
do
turn
follow.
into?
Weirdly, they both do follow Franklin's wishes. And in 1990, the funds were worth $4.5 million in Boston and $2 million in Philadelphia. So good investment.
Fuck yeah, that's how you do it. That's
Right?
amazing.
But I guarantee you, from 1990 to today, those funds do not exist anymore.
Oh no, man. You can't tell me that these city governments are any different than I would be if someone all of a sudden said, "Hey, like 100 years ago, some dude put $1.50 in a savings account for you, and now you have $25,000."
But to be
You want to know
fair,
what to do with that $25,000? Buy shit.
buy shit. To be fair
Not
though,
pay
like the
anything.
money was, it was only the first 100 years it couldn't be used. So, I mean, but the fact that there was still money in 1990 is pretty good.
Well, no, I mean, I think that was his exact intention was, hey, man, in like 100 effing years, this money is going to be worth a lot.
Right.
And that's going to be a big old windfall for you. And guess what? Old Ben Franklin gets talked about again in 100 years. Because at this time, he didn't know he was going to be,
On the $100 bill.
basically our only historical figure. Like, there's like two others. Franklin, Washington, Lincoln. Name three more. You can't do it.
Adams,
It's
Johnny. I love
impossible.
me some Adams.
Who? Adam?
John
I don't know
Adams.
Adam. Anyway.
Johnny Appleseed. Does he count?
He wasn't
real?
real. That's a myth. I thought he was like the guy with the dude with the big blue ox. Who's that?
Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, Paul Bunyan. I thought they were the
I'm
same
sure-
thing.
There's a grain of truth in every myth, I'm sure, right? American
mean,
folklore, maybe.
That's what people want you to think anyway. They want you
Well-
to think there's a grain of truth in every lie, right?
And on that note, Johnny, that's Ben Franklin in
All
his
right.
whoremongering, intelligent, weirdly savant way.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Historic Hindsight. Every week, we take a look at some of the major events that took place during this week in a segment that we like to call This Week in History.
And I feel fine. 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
All right, Johnny, first up today, I've got the Third Enforcement Act, the Civil Rights Act, or the Ku Klux Klan Act. These are the names of this one act. They come under 3 different names. It would happen on April 20th, which is actually the day that we're recording it, in 1871.
Oh yeah, happy 420 by the way.
Yeah, 420.
Yeah.
I didn't go with the obvious 420 because, well, obvious. But both my things I have this week are on 420.
Okay, so what was this? This has so many different names.
Yes, it does. We'll stick to the Third Enforcement Act. It was signed into law by U.S. Grant. It was the last of 3 enforcement acts that he passed by Congress during the Reconstruction to fight attacks upon the suffrage rights of African Americans. Specifically, it targeted the Ku Klux Klan and other organizations that were deemed to be terrorists. Good. We have Ulysses S. Grant right after the war acknowledging that people in the South are racist assholes.
Bunch of dicks over here.
Bunch of dicks.
Gonna keep being that way.
And they're not happy that the slaves are now free, and they're going off and lynching the slaves for no freaking, or the ex-slaves for no reason. So we got to put a stop to that. So he creates the Enforcement Act. It gave him, the president, the power to suppress state disorders on his own and suspend the right of habeas corpus. That's bad. So basically, he created this law that said we need to stop the terrorists. Good. And I'm going to do so by shitting all over the Constitution and getting rid of your rights to fair trials and all that fun stuff.
You know what, Tommy? You got to make some sacrifices. And sometimes it has to be literally all of your rights.
Yeah, right. Grant would use this power on multiple occasions, sending federal troops into the South to deal with the Ku Klux Klan terrorism. Members of the KKK would be tried in federal court, so he didn't completely suspend habeas corpus. He did still give them trials, completely and totally fair, but, you know, in federal court as opposed to local state court. And he would often use mostly black jurors. So not so much a juror of their peers, which is fucking hilarious. Like, I actually like, you know what? No, great. Not fair at all in fuck the Constitution, but they're KKK members, so fuck them. Who cares? Because of this, the first wave of the KKK was actually nearly obliterated and did not return again until early 1900s when, of course, you know, this law stopped being enforced and Reconstruction was dismantled. So for that 30-year gap.
We were this close to just not having a KKK.
Yeah, well, we were. They were gone because everybody was afraid to be KKK because, you know, you'd be arrested in your house in the middle of the night for, like, having a white sheet in your house.
Right.
And they were and it stopped it. But then when Reconstruction ended in the early 1900s, the KKK came back.
Yeah, well. All right.
Yeah. Our next, yeah. So my next thing I have for you, Johnny, here is that Baron Manfred von Richthofen. So Baron von Richthofen.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gets his 79th. He gets his 79th and 80th confirmed kills on April 20th, 1918. He is the Red Baron of Germany.
Ah, yes, and Wild von?
Baron von Richthofen. So on April 20th, the Germans were engaged in a final massive offensive in an attempt to break the stalemate and end World War I. Spoiler alert, didn't work for them.
Oh. Germany lost.
World War I.
Oh. And the second one?
Yeah. They got a bad track record with the whole World War.
Would hate to be German right now. Thank goodness they lost.
He would provide air support to the air reconnaissance during this engagement. And none other than his famed flying circus. So they were the ones that were responsible for it. This big, bright, tri-ring red Fokker.
Those were so cool, though.
They were. He did have the best badass. I mean, the German planes, like of World War One, their paint schemes, they're so beautiful. I mean, maybe the whole empire thing that they had going for them wasn't the greatest
Yeah,
thing,
I mean
but
the whole
the planes
reason
were
for
beautiful.
the reason for fighting everything else, but as far as branding goes, really they had everybody else beat.
They did. They did. An air battle would obviously ensue over the skies of northern France, and Richthofen would knock down 2 British Sopwith camels, making his 79th, 80th confirmed kill. In World War One, since aerial combat was new, and people were like, not the most honest about who they shot down, in order for a kill to be confirmed, it had to be witnessed by troops on the ground on your own nation's side. So part of the reason why British and French Air Force kills aren't as high as the Germans was because most of the air fighting, especially towards the end of the war, was happening on German sides. So
Well,
if you knock down a German plane on German side, your British troops aren't going to see it, so it didn't count.
yeah, I mean, also Germany with their pride and their everything else.
Aren't going to be
Oh,
like, yeah,
I shot down that English plane over there. Didn't you see it? Oh, yeah, very good. Yes, very good. Yes. Yes, you don't
but
want to go to the concentration camp. No, thank
yeah,
you.
and there weren't concentration camps yet, Johnny.
Oh, you
We
think
just-
they didn't know they were coming? Come on.
Likely though, Baron von Richthofen actually had well over 100 kills because there were plenty of unconfirmed kills that
Right.
they were witnessed by other Germans in the air, but since nobody on the ground saw it. On April 21st, the day afterwards, in 1918, Baron von Richthofen would wind up being shot down and killed. So while flying over Morlancourt Ridge, which is near the Somme River, Richthofen began pursuing a very novice Canadian pilot named Lieutenant Wilfrid Wap May. So not a hard target, not anything he should have been a problem with. During that pursuit, Richthofen had actually just, Wap had actually just shot at Richthofen's cousin. So Richthofen went to support his cousin, Wolfram Richthofen. And during that pursuit, another British pilot by the name of Captain Arthur Roy Brown, who was a schoolmate of Wap, would do a diving attack onto Richthofen. Richthofen turned his plane to avoid Brown's attack, easily doing so, and then resumed his pursuit of May, which was very, very close to important. At this point, Richthofen was hit with a single .303 round to the chest, likely causing a quick death. However, even being wounded in the chest, he maintained long enough to create a hard but safe landing on the ground next to Canadian trenches.
So they're saying he provided a quick death, but he had time to land.
Yeah, like it wasn't
Sounds
like
to me like maybe he got hit in the chest, died, and the plane just kind of landed in the field.
it might have. Yeah, it might have. Although
I think we're offering too much credit.
Although the Canadians that did go up to the plane said that he did say one final word as they approached, which was kaput.
I don't buy that for a second.
Yeah,
I think that was his body just expelling gas and everything. And they're like, oh, he said kaput.
Yeah, he sure did.
Yeah, F off, guys.
Brown, Captain Arthur Roy Brown, would actually be credited with Richthofen's death, but first-hand accounts on the ground and the position of the plane, damage to the plane, and the entry and exit wound of Richthofen himself makes it more likely that the anti-aircraft gunner, Sergeant Cedric Popkin, was the person to have actually killed Richthofen, as Richtofen's shot most likely came from below.
What is this, CSI WW1?
Pretty
like,
much, yeah.
Like, Jesus, Pete, like, they couldn't figure out so many different things, and they're like, oh, well, no, based on the angle of the entry and exit wounds of this body we recovered from an airplane that crashed and burned.
Johnny, it's an honor to be
it was this other guy. Come on.
It's an honor to be the guy to shoot down Richthofen. I mean, this is the ace of the war, and I think arguably even today, I think he's got one of the highest, if not the highest, aircraft kill rates.
Well,
so
I think he has the highest honor because I assume he's the Red Baron, and that's now become a pizza brand.
Yeah, and he's got the pizza brand, so you want to be the guy who shot down the pizza
brand. I mean, so that's the highest honor there could be.
Yeah, right? So Richthofen's plane itself, even though it was a hard landing, it would survive. but it was quickly stripped by souvenir hunters and completely destroyed because they're on the ground and they're assholes and they want a piece of the Red Baron's plane.
Yeah, welcome to humanity.
And that's This Week in History.